This is the Robert Judat podcast, refined conversations on love, attraction, and becoming your best self. Stay curious.
So, imagine for a second that you're living in this, massive, sprawling 100-room mansion,
Oh, nice.
right? You've got secret passageways, a conservatory, a huge library, like an underground pool. Just an unbelievable setup.
Sounds incredible, yeah.
But the catch is, since the day you were literally born, someone handed you a floor plan that said you are only allowed to use the front porch and, the main hallway.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and you spent your entire life out there perfectly content, just thinking, well, I guess this is the whole house,
Right, because that's all you've ever been shown.
Exactly. And that is exactly what modern culture has done to human anatomy.
Oh, totally. It is the ultimate architectural scam, really.
It really is. I mean, right now, inside your body, there are these vast biological networks that are capable of producing full body paralysis or hands-free climaxes.
Right, energetic releases where you don't even need a single touch.
Exactly. But 90% of us are just stuck out on that porch trying to press the exact same single button over and over again.
And then, wondering why we feel exhausted or just completely unfulfilled.
Right. So today in this deep dive, we are basically handing you the master keys to the rest of the property.
I love that.
Because if you are listening to this right now and maybe you've ever felt a pang of guilt because you needed a wand to finish.
Oh, yes.
Or, maybe you faked your way through some awkward, fumbling routine just to protect your partner's ego.
Which happens constantly, yeah.
Constantly. We are about to validate everything you've been feeling, and we're going to do it using, hard biology and neuroscience.
Yes, because the sources we are looking at today are just phenomenal. We've got two prominent sex and relationship experts.
Right. They had this incredibly candid conversation.
Very candid. They break down what they categorize as the 10 ways to orgasm.
And what's so vital about their conversation, I think, is that they completely dismantle this concept of the biological vending machine.
Oh, the vending machine myth is the worst. This idea that sex is just this transactional sequence, right? Insert coin, press the designated button.
Receive standardized orgasm.
Exactly, receive standardized orgasm. But they reframe the body as this extraordinarily complex instrument.
Right, capable of a vast, highly individualized spectrum of music, but, provided you actually know how to play it.
Which most of us are never taught.
No, not at all. So we need to make a promise to you, the listener, right out the gate here. We are leaving all shame at the door today.
Absolutely zero judgment.
Right, zero. We're going to talk about anatomy, fluids, fetishes, mechanics.
The works.
The works.
Yeah.
So whether you want to understand your own biological wiring better or, you just want to be a much more educated partner, we're going completely off the culturally approved script.
I am so ready for this.
Okay, so let's start right back on that front porch we mentioned earlier. Because even the most culturally recognized starting point for vulva owners, the clitoris, is just fundamentally misunderstood.
Oh, completely. It is treated as this simple external nub,
Right.
when in reality it is an incredibly complex neurological epicenter.
Yeah, and the sources highlight this so well. Listening to one of the experts describe her early attempts at self-exploration is just universally relatable.
Oh my gosh, the video game character story.
Yes. She talks about being a teenager, figuring out what this anatomical structure actually was, and she's spending 20 to 30 minutes manually masturbating over a picture of Raiden from Devil May Cry.
Right, a fictional video game character.
Exactly. And she is putting in grueling physical labor. Her arms are literally cramping. She is sweating.
Just working her body to the bone.
Just to achieve a single fleeting climax.
And from a purely neurological standpoint, that makes perfect sense.
Wait, really? Why?
Because the clitoris contains upwards of 8,000 nerve endings.
8,000. That's insane.
Right, and they are packed into a very small external surface area. So to trigger the neurological cascade that actually results in an orgasm, those specific nerves require sustained, intense, and above all, rhythmic stimulation.
Okay, so when you're just using your hands.
Exactly. When you rely solely on human hands, you are asking these small hand and forearm muscles to perform a literal endurance event.
Right, so muscle fatigue sets in way before you even reach the nerve threshold.
Exactly. Which brings us to the absolute game changer that she discusses, which is introducing a motor.
The toys.
Yeah.
Yes. She talks about the sheer undeniable relief of bringing sex toys into her routine.
Like the classic Hitachi wand or, quiet Lalo vibrator.
Right, and suddenly the time and the physical strain are just cut entirely in half.
It's a biological revelation.
It is. But I want to pull at this thread for a second because it reveals something that is just so infuriating to me.
What's that?
Why, in partnered sex, is bringing a small piece of vibrating silicone into the bedroom still viewed by so many people as a threat?
Oh, man. It comes down to a profound misunderstanding of mechanics mixed with a very fragile cultural ego.
Ego, yes.
Many partners, and particularly male partners who have been conditioned by this myth of the magic penis, they view a toy as a direct competitor.
Right, they think like, oh, if she needs a machine, it means my technique is bad or my anatomy is inadequate.
Which is just so wrong. Let's reframe that with our blueprint analogy.
Okay.
Using a vibrator during partnered sex is basically like riding an e-bike.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Right. You and your partner are still going on this beautiful, intimate ride together. You are actively participating, you're pedaling, you're steering.
Yeah, you're navigating the path.
But you have a little motor assisting you on the incredibly steep hills so you don't completely exhaust your physical stamina before you even reach the scenic view.
That makes so much sense. It is absolutely wild to me that there's a stigma around bringing a motor on the ride when the terrain biologically demands it.
The e-bike analogy is spot on because it highlights function over ego. I mean, a human hand or a human genital simply cannot replicate the sustained, high-frequency, unchanging vibration that a mechanical motor provides.
Right. Humans aren't machines. We get tired, our rhythm changes.
Exactly. And those 8,000 nerve endings often hit a plateau where they physically require that mechanical consistency to push over the edge into climax.
So it's not a failure of a partner's technique at all.
Not at all. It is simply matching the correct tool to the biological requirement of the nerve.
And one of the experts makes such a vital point here, like, we have to stop viewing toys as the enemy or the replacement. They are facilitators.
Yes, facilitators.
And structurally, taking the pressure off and achieving that initial clitoral orgasm is often the biological primer for everything else we're going to talk about today.
This is where the mechanics of vasocongestion come into play.
Okay, break that down for me. What is vasocongestion?
So when that initial clitoral orgasm occurs, it triggers a massive physiological chain reaction in the body. A huge surge of blood rushes into the entire pelvic region and just pools there.
Okay.
The external vulva becomes deeply engorged, and the internal vaginal walls literally swell. They plump up.
So you're basically turning on the power grid for the rest of the mansion.
Exactly. Suddenly, all those internal rooms that were dark and, inaccessible, they flush with energy and highly sensitive.
Right, so having a clitoral orgasm first makes subsequent orgasms exponentially easier to achieve because the entire system is already online.
The engorgement is key here. As those internal tissues swell with blood, they physically press the internal nerve endings closer to the surface of the vaginal wall.
Oh, wow.
Which makes them vastly more accessible to physical touch.
Okay, so this brings us perfectly to the first internal room we really need to explore, which is the infamous G-spot.
Yes.
And I want to pause right here because both experts in the source material are very quick to correct the terminology on this.
Right, it is not a spot.
It is not a spot. It is the G-zone.
The media has done such an incredible disservice by describing it as a literal physical button.
Oh, for decades. Generations of people who've just been fumbling around inside the vaginal canal looking for a tiny hidden switch.
Like a secret lever in a bookcase or something.
Exactly. But it's not a button at all. It's a broader area, roughly the size of a ping pong ball.
Situated right on the front wall of the vagina.
Yeah. And what completely blew my mind in their discussion is the realization that this zone isn't some separate, mysterious organ.
No, it's not.
It is actually just the internal extension of the clitoris we were just talking about.
Yes. The clitoris isn't just that external nub. It has this vast, wishbone-shaped internal structure of crura and bulbs that wrap entirely around the vaginal canal.
So this is why the power grid analogy holds up perfectly.
Completely. When you stimulate the G-zone, you are effectively massaging the internal legs of the clitoris along with the urethral sponge.
Okay, but wait. I'm stuck on this idea for a second.
Sure, what's up?
If the G-zone is just the internal part of the clitoris, why does the orgasm feel so fundamentally different?
That's a great question.
Because they describe the external clitoral climax as a sudden burst of fireworks. Sharp, intense, this spasming, oh my God feeling.
Right.
But the G-zone orgasm is described as a deep, sustained, rolling wave. Shouldn't the exact same organ produce the exact same feeling?
It seems like it should, but it comes down to tissue depth and nerve dispersal.
Okay, explain that.
Think of the external clitoris like a hi-hat cymbal. You strike it and you get a very sharp, immediate, piercing crash.
Right.
The internal G-zone is more like a massive bass drum.
Oh, I see.
The nerves there are spread across a wider area, and they're buried beneath layers of spongy tissue, so it takes deeper, broader, rhythmic resonance to activate them.
Okay, so when they finally do fire.
The sensation isn't a sharp spike. It's this sustained, resonant hum that physically washes over the body. You reach this plateau of intense pleasure, and you just stay there.
Suspended in a prolonged wave.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right, which obviously requires a completely different physical approach.
Yeah, totally. While the external clitoris might need the high-speed vibration of a wand, the internal G-zone often responds best to rhythmic sweeping pressure.
Exactly.
And this naturally leads us to one of the most, I think, liberating and controversial revelations in their entire conversation.
Oh, the boyfriend penis.
The reality of the boyfriend penis. It is just a phenomenal deconstruction of a deeply harmful myth.
It really is, because we have this cultural fetishization almost entirely driven by mainstream visual porn of the 8 or 9 inch incredibly large penis.
Right. It's presented to us as the ultimate biological prize, like the gold standard of sexual capability.
But the sources emphatically state the exact opposite. In their lived experience, and biologically speaking, an average-sized penis, which they affectionately call the boyfriend penis, is actually vastly preferred for achieving genuine G-zone pleasure.
We really have to separate visual spectacle from tactile reality here.
Yes. A camera needs exaggeration to register on a screen, right? A 9-inch penis looks dramatic, it fills the frame, it creates a specific visual aesthetic.
But your internal nervous system does not care about camera angles.
No, it does not. It cares about precise, comfortable, rhythmic pressure.
And the sources are brutally honest about the physical consequences of overly large anatomy. They list the realities that never make it into the movies.
Internal bleeding, severe pain from hitting the cervix,
Bacterial vaginosis caused by micro tears in the vaginal wall.
and just the absolute inability to comfortably ride or try specific positions.
Right, because the vaginal canal has a physical limit. If the anatomy is too large, every single thrust is causing physiological trauma rather than pleasure.
And then the body tenses up. It's a defensive mechanism to protect the cervix, which is the exact opposite of the relaxed state you need for a G-zone orgasm.
They bring up a very specific mechanical example that I found fascinating. They talk about wanting to use the donkey vibrator combo,
Oh, right.
which is having a partner penetrate from behind, while the receiving partner simultaneously holds a vibrator on their external clitoris.
To maximize that blood pooling we discussed earlier.
Exactly. But if the penetrating anatomy is too large, you literally cannot do this. You cannot comfortably angle your pelvis. You cannot relax into the depth.
It's like trying to navigate a massive, oversized piece of rigid furniture through a narrow hallway.
Yes, you're just scraping the paint and damaging the walls.
But the boyfriend penis, however, is perfectly proportioned to rub the coronal ridge, the lip of the penis, directly against that ping-pong-sized G-zone.
Without bottoming out and causing pain.
Right. It is a profound unlearning of cultural conditioning to simply admit out loud, hey, I prefer what actually feels good over what society tells me should look good.
Because comfort is the fundamental prerequisite for deep internal pleasure.
Absolutely.
Okay, but let's step out of the pelvic region entirely for a minute, because pleasure isn't just confined to the genitals.
Not at all.
Just as visual media misrepresents size, it also completely ignores how the rest of the body can be a primary trigger for intense climax.
We are entering the territory of the nipplegasm.
Yes, which is entirely real, incredibly intense, and surprisingly underdiscussed.
So underdiscussed.
And a crucial point made in the sources is that this applies to all genders.
Right. There is the stereotype that only women enjoy chest stimulation.
But men can achieve literal hands-free ejaculation purely from having their nipples stimulated.
Because of the vagus nerve.
Ah, okay, the vagus nerve.
Yes. The mechanism here relies on the vagus nerve and other neural pathways that travel directly from the chest up into the exact same sensory cortex in the brain that registers genital stimulation.
The brain literally lights up in the same pattern.
Exactly. But what is vital to understand here is the extreme variation in the type of touch required to trigger this.
This is where it gets highly individualized, almost like a combination lock.
Yeah, the experts compare their preferences, and they are night and day.
Some people require intense, hard stimulation. They mention twisting, aggressive pulling, or even using metal nipple clamps.
Which one of them found agonizing, by the way?
Right. But others absolutely require that intense pain to cross the pleasure threshold. And then you have the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Right, where skin is so hypersensitive that direct skin-to-skin contact from a hand or a mouth is actually painfully overwhelming.
Yeah, one of them requires the stimulation to happen through a barrier, like a thin cotton t-shirt.
She needs the lightest possible flicking or teasing motion, almost so light you can barely feel the physical friction.
And the physiological result of getting this hyperspecific formula right is just astonishing. It's described not as a pelvic spasm, but as a full-body paralysis.
You get physically stuck in an intensely pleasurable, unmoving state.
Wow.
That paralysis is a fascinating neurological phenomenon. The sensory input from the chest becomes so overwhelming that the brain's motor cortex essentially pauses.
The body freezes because all the bandwidth is being consumed by processing the sensory pleasure. And this concept of the body reaching an overwhelming threshold of release brings us to one of the most misunderstood biological functions in human anatomy.
Squirting.
Or female ejaculation, yeah. This is an area historically surrounded by so much confusion, mystery, and frankly, terrible anatomical education.
Oh, the worst education. Let's clear the air using the biology they provide.
Please do.
Squirting originates from tiny, minuscule glands located entirely inside the urethra, not the vaginal canal itself.
Okay, so inside the urethra.
Right. Specifically, these are often referred to as the paraurethral glands, or Skene's glands.
Skene's glands, got it.
When the body reaches a state of intense, prolonged arousal, these glands secrete a specific fluid.
Now, the sources do acknowledge the biological reality here, right? Because this fluid shares the exact same exit pathway as urine, the urethra. It is often mixed with urine.
Yes, it is. But it is fundamentally a distinct glandular secretion driven by neurological arousal, not just a full bladder.
But the physical mechanics of actually achieving this are deeply tied to a massive psychological barrier, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. The sources note that squirting requires training the body to release and push out.
And this is where we fight against decades of human conditioning.
Right. For your entire life since you were a toddler, your natural unconscious habit when you feel fullness, pressure, or a tingling sensation in that specific urethral area is to panic and clench.
Your autonomic nervous system is programmed to hold it back.
Exactly. Squirting requires the exact opposite muscular and psychological action. It requires a complete conscious letting go of the pelvic floor and the urethral sphincter.
So if you are listening to this right now and you've always clamped down the second you felt that intense wave building,
It's essentially a lifetime of being successfully potty trained working against you.
that is wild. It sounds exactly like trying to unclench a fist that you have been holding tightly closed since you were 3 years old.
It really is. Your brain is screaming, no, don't let go. That's an accident. That's shameful.
And you have to somehow convince your nervous system that it's actually safe to release.
That is an incredibly accurate way to frame it. You are fighting an ingrained autonomic defense mechanism.
So how do you actually rewrite a reflex you've had since childhood?
This is where they introduce the concept of the dopamine loop.
The dopamine loop. Okay, I want to understand the mechanics of this. How does it work?
Well, you have to train your brain to actively crave the vulnerability of letting go. When we talk about the dopamine loop, it's not just a metaphor. Your brain is literally wiring a new neural pathway.
Wow.
If you ensure that your sexual experiences are consistently rewarding, meaning they consistently result in extreme physical and mental pleasure, perhaps through clitoral or G-zone stimulation, your brain begins to associate that vulnerable, unclenched state with a massive chemical dopamine payout.
So when you finally allow yourself to release that muscle slightly, the rush of pleasure tells the nervous system this vulnerability is safe, and it feels incredible.
Exactly. It overrides the antidiuretic hormone that normally keeps you clenched.
Okay, so if you equate sex with just like going through the motions or enduring awkward friction without actually reaching a peak, your brain has zero incentive to unclench that metaphorical fist.
Right. Why risk the vulnerability for a mediocre payout?
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Squirting, in this context, is the ultimate physical manifestation of completely releasing mental and physical pressure, because the brain finally trusts that the reward is worth the absolute loss of control.
Precisely. The brain must feel entirely safe to unlock that specific room in the mansion.
Okay, but this raises a huge practical issue for me.
What's that?
If the key to all of this whether it's navigating the massive nerve density of the clitoris, finding the exact rhythm for the G-zone, discovering whether a nipple needs a metal clamp or a cotton t-shirt, or creating the psychological safety to squirt.
Right.
If all of this requires highly specific, individualized touch, how do you actually get a partner to execute it?
Yeah.
You can't just hand them the blueprint to your mansion and hope they don't get lost in the hallways.
Which brings us to the most vital skill in this entire deep dive: microsexual communication.
Microsexual communication. It sounds incredibly clinical, like a corporate synergy buzzword.
It does sound a bit clinical, but it is actually the scientifically backed predictor of long-term sexual satisfaction.
And there's this anecdote from the sources that perfectly illustrates why the idea of the intuitive mind-reading partner is just a complete disaster.
Oh, yes, it is a masterclass in overcoming the submissive cultural script.
Right. So one of the experts is on a date with a guy she describes as a really hot dude.
Okay.
They are hooking up, and he is vigorously using his fingers inside her while simultaneously pressing a vibrating wand against her clitoris.
Now, visually, choreographically, this looks like peak performance.
Totally. He's putting in maximum effort, he's using tools, he's highly engaged.
But physically, for her specific nervous system.
It wasn't working at all. The rhythm was erratic, the movement was too chaotic, and the friction was wrong.
And historically, this is the exact moment where cultural shame dictates the outcome. The receiving partner usually fakes an orgasm or just stays quiet and endures the numbness entirely to protect the other person's ego.
Exactly. The fear of looking up at this incredibly hot, enthusiastic guy and making him feel inadequate.
But she doesn't follow that script.
No, she stops the action.
Ah.
She explicitly asks him to stop moving his hands. She gives precise, micro-level instructions. She says, leave your fingers exactly where they are inside, do not move them an inch, and hold the head of the wand completely still against the clitoris.
And the biological response to that precise calibration.
Instant orgasm.
Instant.
The very second he stopped the chaotic movement and just held the tools exactly as her specific neurological password required, her body responded immediately.
But executing that requires overcoming a massive barrier of submissiveness.
Yeah, if you don't give this kind of granular microfeedback, your partner is quite literally stumbling around in the dark, guessing what feels good based on what they saw in a movie 5 years ago.
This touches on a deeply ingrained dynamic, especially for women and vulva owners who are heavily conditioned by society to be passive receivers of pleasure rather than active vocal directors of it.
We were taught to be grateful for the effort, regardless of the efficacy.
Exactly.
But I have to push back here, because I can hear the listener hesitation screaming through the audio right now.
Hit me.
Doesn't stopping in the middle of this passionate, heated, sweaty moment to give highly specific physical instructions completely ruin the vibe?
Right.
Like, okay, brake here, turn left, 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, hold for 3 seconds. Doesn't that clinical driver's ed instruction instantly kill the passion?
That is the universal fear. But we need to radically reframe how we view passion.
Okay.
Microcommunication is not a critique of the driver. It is a vital calibration of the vehicle.
Oh, that's good.
Think about the alternative. Passion is killed much, much faster by 20 minutes of awkward, ineffective, slightly painful fumbling than it is by a confident 5-second course correction that leads to a spectacular climax.
That is such a crucial truth. Bad, uncommunicative sex kills the mood way faster than talking about good sex.
Exactly. And the experts explain how to weave this into the experience organically. You don't have to blow a referee whistle and stop the play.
Right.
You can use positive reinforcement phrases like, can I make a suggestion? Or it would feel absolutely amazing if you just held that right there.
Right.
Or if speaking up in the heat of the moment is truly too daunting for your nervous system at first, utilize post-sex pillow talk.
Right. The fundamental philosophy we're talking about here is radical ownership.
Radical ownership.
Yes, your pleasure is your responsibility. It is not something your partner is supposed to magically intuit through sheer force of attraction.
If you want a specific biological outcome, you must provide the specific verbal input.
Absolutely.
And if microsexual communication is essential for the front porch, the parts of the body we are generally culturally comfortable talking about, it becomes absolutely vital, completely non-negotiable for the areas of the mansion that are shrouded in the most shame, fear, and taboo. Let's open the door to the basement.
Yes, we need to talk about the anal region and the prostate.
This is where the cultural baggage is unequivocally the heaviest. The sources acknowledge right away that people often have deeply negative early experiences with anal exploration.
Very transparently. They mention dealing with actual pain, the realities of having irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, and anatomical factors like endometriosis.
There are very real, physical, non-shame-based reasons why this area can be a source of intense anxiety.
But they also tackle the visceral psychological fears head on.
And education is the only effective antidote to that fear. One of the experts mentions working with a TV sexologist, Aisha Paris-Smith,
Right.
who provided a crucial piece of anatomical knowledge that completely demystifies the space.
The two-layer architecture. This blew my mind.
It's so helpful to visualize.
She explained that there are actually two layers, or two distinct sphincters, inside the anal canal that you have to navigate.
Right. There's the external sphincter, which we consciously control, and the internal sphincter, which is autonomic.
Knowing the actual structural blueprint of the space removes some of the terrifying mystery. It's not just a black hole. It's a biological pathway with specific doors.
Exactly. And they do not shy away from the biggest, most paralyzing fear people have, the fear of feces.
It is the biological reality of the lower digestive tract, and treating it as an unspeakable, horrifying taboo only amplifies the shame and guarantees that people will stay tense, which guarantees pain.
Right. They normalize it entirely. The advice is highly practical and grounding. Bodies have digestive tracts.
So the best time to explore anal play is simply after a natural bowel movement in a clean wipe.
Or, as they mention, utilizing a bidet. You do not need intense, medical-grade, multi-hour douching routines to be clean enough for pleasure.
They also take a necessary moment to naturalize the fact that bodies have hair.
Yeah.
They talk about having a hairy area there and how many partners absolutely love it. Bodies have hair, bodies have fluids, bodies process food.
Removing the demand for pristine, doll-like plastic perfection is step one to accessing the dense nerve endings hidden there.
And once that baseline of biological reality is accepted and the fear is managed, we can look at the profound pleasure potential, particularly for individuals with prostate glands.
The prostate is universally recognized by anatomists as the male equivalent of the G-zone.
The prostate orgasm. It's described anatomically as a walnut-sized gland located surprisingly high up inside the anal cavity, resting just against the rectal wall.
The sources note it is usually accessed using a middle finger, reaching up and curving towards the front of the body, or by using specifically curved prostate toys.
Now, the prostate's biological purpose is to secrete fluid that nourishes and protects sperm.
Because of this vital reproductive role, it is packed with an incredibly potent bundle of nerve endings, explicitly designed by evolution to generate intense pleasure upon release.
And yet, despite being this biological marvel, it is wildly underexplored.
Because of its location in the blueprint.
Which is just the ultimate tragedy of cultural conditioning. We treat this area like a radioactive exclusion zone, yet for men, there is literally a built-in, highly effective pleasure center hidden right there.
It is the anatomical equivalent of owning a high-performance sports car, but completely refusing to use the turbo boost because the button to activate it happens to be located behind a panel you were told never to touch.
Oh, I don't go in there. That's not for me. You are artificially limiting your own nervous system.
That avoidance is heavily, almost entirely rooted in cultural homophobia.
Right.
There is a pervasive irrational fear among many heterosexual men that exploring prostate play somehow alters their sexual orientation or makes them fundamentally less masculine.
Which is biologically absurd. Nerve endings do not have a sexual orientation.
No, they don't.
A bundle of sensory tissue does not know or care about societal constructs of masculinity.
Exactly. And to bridge this massive gap of shame, the sources offer excellent, highly practical advice. Start your exploration solo.
Yes, you do not have to immediately involve a partner and navigate their potential judgments if you're dealing with your own layers of cultural shame.
Do your research. Buy a specifically designed prostate toy. Figure out your own internal map behind locked doors.
Right, because just like the clitoris, individual preferences vary wildly. They point out that you need to figure out if your specific prostate prefers an in-and-out sensation or more of a come-hither curved massaging motion against the wall.
And structurally, there is a key tip shared here regarding the hydraulic system of the body.
Let's talk about the hydraulics.
To maximize the prostate experience, giving the penis external attention simultaneously is crucial. Just as external clitoral stimulation primes the internal vaginal G-zone by pulling blood to the area, Stimulating the penis draws the necessary blood flow to the entire pelvic region.
which engorges the tissues surrounding the prostate and makes it vastly more sensitive to internal touch.
Exactly. It's all an interconnected hydraulic system of pleasure. Everything affects everything else.
Okay, so from exploring these culturally taboo structural rooms of our mansion, we are now going to veer entirely off the blueprint,
Into the fringes.
into the fringes of sensation. We are moving into the realm of highly individualized brain wiring, where the physical touch almost matters less than the psychological context.
Let's talk about fetishes, feet, ticklegasms, and the power of visuals.
We are shifting from universal human anatomy to the highly subjective, complex psychology of arousal.
Let's start with the extremities. Feet.
Footgasms. The sources detail how some individuals can climax purely from intense pressure, scratching, or even whips applied solely to their feet.
One of the experts even mentions getting a standard reflexology massage from a Thai woman and physically convulsing on the table because the nerve endings in her feet are that hyperlinked to her genital pleasure centers.
That is wild. It demonstrates that the map of erogenous zones is not fixed. The brain can route pleasure signals from the peripheral nervous system in the extremities just as intensely as from the pelvis.
But then they introduce a fetish that is even more specific, incredibly intense, and deeply hard-coded into her psyche, the ticklegasm.
Yes, and we need to clarify immediately.
Yeah.
This isn't the playful, stop it, that tickles, giggling on the couch moment.
Not at all.
She makes it very clear this is an intense consuming fetish. For her, it involves CNC consensual non-consent role play.
Right. It involves physical bondage, the strict non-negotiable use of safe words.
And the sensation of being tickled is so neurologically overwhelming that it results in her crying, convulsing, and climaxing on a table.
It is an extreme, all-encompassing sensory overload that her brain interprets as ultimate pleasure.
What she highlights beautifully and somewhat tragically is the profound isolation of having a rare neurological trigger.
Oh, yeah. When your specific pathway to pleasure isn't represented in mainstream media or even in mainstream kink communities, it can feel incredibly lonely. You feel broken.
She literally thought she was the only person in the world wired this way.
But her solution is brilliant. She took radical ownership.
She created safe, queer-friendly spaces. She literally hosts tickle fetish parties to find matching partners who understand the mechanics and the safety required.
And it works. She talks about her German partner, Max, whom she met specifically because she stopped hiding this part of herself.
And beyond tactile, physical fetishes, the source is also dived into the power of visual and fluid fetishes.
Right, the psychological arousal derived entirely from seeing a specific outcome rather than feeling it.
They discuss the appeal of large loads or semen volume and the taboo thrill of making a mess.
She talks about tying a partner up, using a ring gag, and the power dynamic of dictating exactly where they will climax.
It's heavily visual, and it's such a strong psychological trigger that people seek out medical ways to enhance it. They bring up a supplement called Popstar.
Yes, a product created by board-certified urologists.
Think about that. Formulated by actual doctors, featuring ingredients like zinc and bromelain, which is the compound found in pineapples.
The entire purpose of this clinical supplement is to enhance the volume and the taste of the fluids.
It perfectly illustrates how deeply visual and sensory fetishes drive human behavior.
People are taking doctor-formulated enzyme supplements daily just to heighten the specific visual and olfactory reality of their sexual aesthetic.
If we look at this analytically, it forces us to clinically redefine what a fetish actually is.
How so?
In colloquial terms, people use fetish to mean a quirky preference. Clinically, a fetish is the primary psychological thought, visual, or physical stimulus strictly required for an individual to achieve climax.
Let's bring it back to the mansion analogy. A fetish is just a highly specific, complex keyway on a locked door.
That's a great way to look at it.
For some people, the key to unlock an orgasm is a standard brass key, a romantic dinner, dim lights, and missionary sex. The door opens easily.
For others, the lock is biometric.
Exactly. The key is having the bottom of their foot scratched intensely for 10 minutes straight, or being completely physically restrained and tickled to the point of sensory overload.
The lock isn't broken, it just requires a non-standard key.
And the true friction isn't the fetish itself, the friction is the immense shame of hiding the key.
She notes that when individuals finally shed the shame of their specific required stimulus, when she literally put her tickle fetish openly on her dating profile, her sexual satisfaction skyrocketed.
She stopped apologizing for her biology.
Which is such a powerful takeaway. But up until now, we've been discussing intense physical friction, Precise internal touches, medical supplements, and specific toys.
Right.
What happens if we remove physical touch from the equation entirely? Can the mind unlock the doors by itself?
We enter the final frontier of our anatomical tour, energy orgasms and pelvic floor mastery.
This sounds entirely like science fiction or pure mysticism to me, but they treat it as an achievable biological reality.
They do. They recount a story about a woman named Rosa Maxville, who is the founder of the London School of Tantra.
Yeah, Rosa experienced a literal physical energy orgasm simply by making intense, sustained eye contact with a man in a sauna.
No touching, no physical friction whatsoever.
Just visual and energetic connection.
The sources also mention energy orgies, which are spaces where individuals gather and hands hover inches above the body without ever making physical contact.
Yet, the energetic anticipation alone causes the physical body to undulate and climax. Wait, I have to stop here.
Okay.
Is an energy orgasm basically a Jedi mind trick for your own nervous system?
Oh.
Can you really just think yourself into a physical climax without any mechanical stimulation?
Under the right neurological conditions, yes.
Wow.
While it sounds mystical, if we ground this in hard neuroscience, an energy orgasm is essentially the ultimate peak manifestation of the mind-body connection.
It proves a concept that sexologists have preached for decades. The brain is the largest, most powerful sex organ in the human body.
Exactly.
The genitals are just the output speakers. The brain is the amplifier.
If the mind is completely relaxed, entirely present, devoid of all performance anxiety, and hyper-dialed into subtle, energetic, or visual cues.
The physical body simply follows the brain's lead. The brain triggers the neurological cascade without needing the mechanical friction we discussed on the front porch. And this intense internal focus connects directly to the physical mastery of the pelvic floor, which they also discuss. Pelvic floor and cervical orgasms.
This is the bridge between the purely energetic and the deeply physical.
By learning to actively, consciously contract the vaginal walls or the pelvic floor muscles, an individual can physically manipulate the pooled blood and muscle tension we talked about during the vasocongestion phase.
They can literally squeeze themselves into an internal orgasm by manipulating their own internal blood pressure.
And they point out that men can do this too.
Yes.
Men who rigorously train their pelvic floor muscles can achieve multiple internal orgasms without ever ejaculating.
Simply by mastering the timing and intensity of those internal muscular contractions.
It is absolute anatomical mastery. It's taking conscious control over autonomic functions. And the sources briefly touch upon the extreme end of internal sensation. Sounding.
Right, sounding. We should define this clearly.
This is the physical practice of inserting highly hygienic, specialized, sterile instruments into the urethra, or for some, gently manipulating the cervical opening.
They are incredibly careful to note that this requires absolute trust, extreme medical hygiene, and often professional guidance.
Like working with a trained dominatrix, a somatic healer, or a specialized sex worker.
But it just reiterates the core theme of this entire discussion. The internal landscape of the human body is vast, complex, and largely unexplored by the average person.
It brings us full circle. The internal mechanics of the body, whether triggered by a hovering hand, a specific visual cue, or a deeply internal physical stimulus, are capable of symphonic responses that our cultural default script flatly refuses to acknowledge.
Which brings us to the big takeaway of this entire deep dive.
Yes, if we zoom out from the wands, the anatomy, the dopamine loops, the fetishes, and the biology, the paradigm shift here is profound.
The recurring, undeniable themes across all 10 of these distinct pathways are rigorous self-exploration, the active, conscious releasing of shame, and the absolute necessity of relentless microcommunication.
The human body is not a vending machine.
It really isn't.
You do not just push the missionary button and wait for the prize to drop. It is a complex, sprawling instrument.
Whether your body prefers a high-frequency clitoral vibration, the intense sensory overload of a ticklegasm, the deep internal release of a prostate massage, or the profound psychological letting go of a squirting orgasm, it is entirely up to you to learn how to play it.
And how to bravely teach your partner to play it.
You must claim radical ownership of your own physiological responses. No one else has the map to your specific nervous system.
Exactly. And I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over today. Think back to that massive 100-room mansion we talked about at the very beginning.
Yeah.
If society, culture, and media have successfully convinced us to lock the doors and completely ignore 90% of our own physical body's capacity for pleasure, what else have we locked away?
That is the truly haunting question.
If we so easily accepted the default script for our physical joy, what mental, emotional, or creative rooms in your own mind have you boarded up simply because they weren't part of the narrow floor plan you were handed at birth?
What other capacities are sitting in the dark waiting for you to turn on the power grid?
Take a moment today to grab the master keys. Go explore the rest of your house.